Hi there, and welcome to the Jane Anderson Show today. I'm so thrilled that you are here. We talk all things women in consulting, and most of the people I interview have consulting practices, so are women who are working with medium, small, and large organisations, and typically working in that B2B space. They come from a wide range of areas of expertise, so they could be leadership experts, resilience, anything few and far between. And I've been doing this for a number of years. I came out of corporate, and my absolute passion is helping women who have practices and really want to be able to create really transformational change in the corporate space. So our very special guest today is someone who I really admire. Her name is Sue Anderson. She works as a coach, trainer, mediator, speaker, and author, specialising in resilience and empowerment. She's the author of Unshakeable at Work, and it's a book that shows you how to stop taking things personally and start building resilience. She's a thought leader in the areas of resilience building and individual empowerment at work, and she helps people move from a place of anger and frustration to strength, control, authority, and confidence. Her programs empower employees, and her specialty is helping people develop mental toughness so they can excel in the pressures of the workplace. She does some incredible work, particularly in the space of feedback and creating feedback capability for leaders, and her insights and her research in this space is really interesting. So I'm asking her about that today, so make sure you listen in for that. But what I love most about Sue is she really thinks people can become really unshakable, and feedback is a big part of that, and that she's creating feedback cultures that are really critical to improving everyone's well-being at work and quality of life, and to be able to achieve their potential. So please join me today in welcoming Sue Anderson.
All right, Sue, thank you so much for being part of the show today. We really appreciate your time. I know how busy you are, so thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jane. It's a pleasure to be here. I feel very privileged, actually.
You're in good company, and others are in good company with you. Sue, you have an incredible practice. For those who are listening, we have a lot of listeners who are sort of starting, a lot of women who have consulting practices, sometimes starting out and growing. You've had your practice for some time. You're well seasoned at this. Tell us about your practice. How did you get into it? How did you start, and what are you doing? Who do you work with now?
Yeah, so I set up what I thought I was setting up a business back 15 years ago. And got lots of business advice, which didn't land very well. But
really? What type of advice did you get?
About developing a business that you can sell at the end and you can franchise out and all that.
Okay.
So that's not what I thought I should have done.
Right.
So I did. So the backstory is I did study psychology when I went to university. Now this is 30 years ago. So back then it was still very much disorder, dysfunction, looking at what's wrong. I did some placements and I just thought, this is not for me. As much as I loved it. So then I went into, still fascinated by the brain. So I went into disability. So I worked in disability in state government for about 12 years.
Okay.
Then I was introduced to something called coaching, which was quite new in Australia, and became qualified in a coach methodology called neurosemantics,
right,
which has come out of America, created by Dr. Michael Hall and an Australian woman, Michelle DeVal. So that was my first insight into, oh my gosh, this is such a powerful tool. So I actually left my regular employment and set up my own business at the time. And I started working with children who were being bullied.
Right.
Which wasn't a deliberate thing. I started just working with women, coaching, they're stuck. And then 4 of them at once said, this is amazing. Can you help my child because they're being bullied at school? And I was like, okay. So I started working with children as young as 7 and ended up, making what I thought was going to be a business out of that. So I'd work with them one-on-one. I'm charging $60 an hour back then.
Tough way to make a living.
Yeah, it was. And then I had my own children as well. So that led to working with the parents, working with the teachers, going into schools, which led to writing the book, Unbullyable. But how I think, even though it wasn't commercially smart, it set me up because I had to explain pretty complex things about how to be resilient and not affected by other people to children 7, 8, 9 years of age.
Wow.
So it forced me to simplify these big concepts down into easily digestible bits of information. And the other thing it did is because I ended up going into schools, and my very first school I worked in was a very interesting school. It was very low socioeconomic, and they gave me basically the bullies, or the children engaging in bullying behaviour, to work with. So that was thrown, straight into the fire. I had to really think on my feet. But how that set me up was I'm not afraid to coach anyone. I've coached teenagers who have put other kids in hospital, and it's taught me to be non-judgmental, to truly listen, to understand what's going on for them, that would make sense. Right. So the neurosemantics, which is all about beliefs and thinking styles in a lot of belief change work, combined with had to really simplify everything down and then give me really challenging people to try and work with one-on-one and in groups. Imagine a group of interesting teenagers who don't want to be there.
Amazing.
So I think that really set me up to have, I think, the courage to now do what I'm doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing. What an incredible journey. So coming out of all that study, working with children, and I guess some days you might feel like we're still working with some children in the corporate world. Tell us about how, so you've come out of that's a tough kind of way, as we said, to earn a living, not big revenue at all, working hard for every dollar. That's been an incredible training ground for you. Yeah. And then you started to make this move into corporate world. How did that work?
Yeah. So I'd work with the children, and I would always work with the parents.
Okay.
And the parents would say to me, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. You've been able to help my child be far more resilient, less affected by other people. We need you at our work." Right. And I'd say no. I like working with kids. They're fun. Anyway, eventually I did transition into so it was through the parents of the kids that I'd coached.
Wow. Okay.
Unbullyable was the name of the program. So then I started running Unbullyable into businesses, corporate, and that wasn't commercially smart.
You don't want to say we've got a bullying problem.
Exactly. That's exactly what they'd say. They'd say, I'd meet with them, I've got this program, Unbullyable, and they'd say, "Can you just not use the B word?" That word. and I even heard of one team, when they heard that I was coming in to work with them, they said no, because we don't want people to think we've got a bullying problem.
Yes.
So that's when Unbullyable grew up and turned into Unshakeable.
Right.
So Unshakeable, it's exactly the same model as Unbullyable, except it's not one bully. It's that you might be affected by 5 different customers today, or you might receive some feedback that has really rattled you, or you've got an interesting person in your team. Yes, they're not bullying you, but you're being affected by them. So that's how Unshakeable at work was created. So that led to working with lots of leaders, how they can be more empowered, more confident. So I still do now a lot of one-on-one coaching. That led to leadership programs, workshops, and then somehow, can you coach me, because I've got this really challenging person in my team. So I'd coach the leader, and then the leader started saying, "Can you work with the team?" And I was like, okay. So then I developed a sort of a niche into high conflict teams. And again, I think it was that working with the very challenging teenage bullies, I can feel really comfortable going into a very high conflict team. So I still do work with, teams of lawyers who are so in conflict that they wouldn't even sit in the room with each other.
Wow.
So that Unshakeable, the resilience, the how you can feel more empowered, led into, okay, how can the whole team now sort itself out? Which that's been very interesting in that it's led to more work sort of comes off. So I'll coach the leader. They'll say, can you work with the team? Oh, can you do a leadership program?
Yep.
Or can you coach these particular people in the team?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's sort of all meshed together. So in the end now I do coaching, the team stuff, the workshops, I'm doing a few at the moment, just reconnecting your team type workshops.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to, I think, communication. What I think sits behind all of the work I've done over the last 15 years is, do people feel comfortable communicating with each other?
Right.
And when I reflected on all the high conflict teams I've worked with, a lot of it has come from people's inability to give and receive feedback in a way that's not going to cause the conflict.
Right. So feedback is really the core of the problem.
Yeah, the armor that people put up, if you know about Brené Brown's work around your armors of self-protection, the emotions that come up, the lack of trust, just basic communication. The thing I love about the topic of feedback is it's so juicy. There's so much to it. Yet most people, well, especially I've been doing my own research lately, they're really fearful of getting it wrong.
Right.
Yeah, so that's where I'd say my
research, that's actually a really interesting point, because, you've been sharing your thoughts about the research. You've surveyed quite a few people. What have been the insights that you've gained from that?
The insights is, so it's my own research. So,
which is great.
Yeah.
You haven't had to go and engage a university. You haven't done all that. You've done this yourself.
Yes, to a point. So I do have a very clever daughter who's doing her PhD in psychology. Right. So she's helped. We set up the survey in Qualtrics, I think it's called. Qualtrics, that's right. She's now pulling out the data. I think it's SPSS, a program like that. And so she's providing me with all the reports. So what's been interesting are things. So we've looked at the different age groups,
right?
Millennials and Gen Z. We've looked at the difference between male and female.
Right.
So some interesting insights in there. The other thing I've done is I've looked at, people who work in rural, for example, rural councils, because they're a lot of my clients, versus metro councils. So we're pulling out all these differences. But what's come across, if I was to summarize, is most people believe they're not receiving enough feedback.
Right.
They're also, most of the people, believing they're not offering enough feedback.
Right.
And it's really interesting if you think of 3 different types of feedback. So the first one is acknowledgement. This is what you're doing well. The middle one is evaluation. This is where you stand. So this is some kind of rating, some kind of measure. Okay. And then the third one is guidance. This is how you can do better. The one thing that's becoming very, very clear through the more and more conversations and the research is that middle one, the evaluation feedback.
Right.
That's the one where the majority of people do not feel confident in offering. Yet that's the one that's in the annual performance reviews every year.
See.
Yeah. So my mission at the moment is to figure out what's going on. And I'm talking like only 3% of people in one of those age groups, I forget which one it was, said they felt confident in offering that type of feedback.
Right.
3%.
Amazing.
Yeah. So it's, you're stepping into the role of, I call it qualified assessor. So you're using some sort of rating, and if it is an annual performance review, you've got to document that, and you've got to sit face to face and say, you know, I'm rating you as this, and you've got to justify why, and there might be a bit of fear around what if the other person doesn't agree.
Yes.
You got to send it off to HR. You know, it's in writing there. So I think there's a real opportunity there to help people, leaders, feel more confident in that type of feedback.
Yes.
The problem, sorry, you go.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the thing that comes across very clearly is if I'm not very good at offering this feedback, the damage is, you know, it's high risk.
Oh,
the relationship's damaged, the trust is damaged, it's going to be awkward, that person's going to stop talking to me, they're going to leave, they're going to put in a complaint,
yes.
or they're going to say I'm bullying them.
Yes. This is amazing, Sue. So because there's so much that comes back to it, which is, you know, innovation, being able to improve things. Organizations are losing good people. So, and you've identified, you know, when it comes to growing and identifying what you're going to do to start a practice, but to be able to grow it, is you've identified a specific thing that is actually in your customer's shopping list and is a major pain point for them, is this issue around being able to, you've identified it's the one that they find the most challenging. So I think a few things that are standing out to me so far is, if we go right back to when you started your practice and with kids, and you've started your practice in that way. That was a specific problem they understood how to buy. So it's all about relevance. You've been able to evolve your practice over into from unbullyable, moving into what was relevant for corporate, which was Unshakeable. So it was more palatable for them. And then now you've identified you've narrowed right in on one specific thing that is that is a crux of a challenge that your clients have. So I think what's even interesting, and relevance again. So you've gone right into narrowing right into the relevance of where people are needing your help. Interesting that you've always called your practice Sue Anderson.
Yes.
Right. So that has allowed you the freedom to evolve your programs, I'm imagining, because you've gone, well, that's okay. I just got to create a new program. I don't have to build a new brand. I don't have to start a new business. Because if you started a program called Unbullyable and your business was called Unbullyable, geez, that would have been tough to make that move. So now that you've evolved this, you've narrowed, you're digging the what would you say, I don't want to say the knifing, but you're digging right into the specific little, and this is a challenge for a lot of people. Sometimes they're going, I've got to solve this whole big thing, and we have to sort of start there. But I love what you've done here. You've identified, after all this experience, which gives you even more credibility to deliver this really narrow little, Peter Cook would call it the aperture, is you coming right in on this little angle and really amplifying it and blowing it up to say, well, in the context of all this problem, this is your real problem, but it's also what they understand. But what you're doing along with your research is you're going deep into this work now of going, okay, so you've come out of that other work, you've got a book to write, you've filled out a questionnaire, and you're identifying, you're doing your own research, which is fabulous. So many people go, oh, there's not enough research out there. I'm trying to fill out my content, but not being afraid to go in and do that. So, you know, now, so what's happened as a result of this evolution of your messaging and your practice now?
So what's happened now is I've got my own IP in that I've got the feedback fitness framework.
Yes.
So that's been really useful, because now I can go into my ideal client. So my ideal client are rural local council. That's right. Yeah. And I mean, rural local council. Okay. State government, I do a lot of work in, and also other businesses, but that's my ideal client. So what's happening at the moment is I'm starting to value my product, because in the past, not my product, my expertise. In the past, I always thought of myself as, oh, you know, she's just Sue Anderson from Ballarat.
Right.
And I would discount.
Yeah.
And I think it came from working in the schools where they'd say, so are you a psychologist? And I'd say, well, no, I did study psychology, and it was like they didn't want to know me. And so I think I was like, okay, so what's happening, I think, for me now is I'm starting to go, well, hang on a minute. I've been doing this for nearly 16 years. I've got a unique perspective, a unique set of experiences. I've got my IP. I've got some research. I've got so many thousands of hours of confidential conversations I've had through my coaching of leaders. So it's me starting to value myself, which has enabled me to, meet with someone, a potential client, write the proposal, start to put my prices up, because what I was doing was not charging enough.
Okay.
And what really helped me there was the problem that I'm solving. It's a very expensive problem.
Yeah.
I just was, a HR person reached out to me yesterday about a team. There's already been an investigation. They don't want the leader to leave. Like, this is a really expensive problem. And it felt really good to be able to say, yep, let me work with the leader. Let me work individually with each of the team members. Then I'll bring them together. So I think it's the confidence in myself that I can solve problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. Starting to believe in myself rather than comparing myself to Dr. So-and-so who's written 27 books and is presenting at all these international conferences, which is what I was doing.
Right.
I was going, well, hang on, I do have this unique skill set and I can get results.
Right.
I think that's really helped me, value myself.
Valuing yourself. Yeah.
And even little things like, writing the weekly newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
I used to just not write it. And now I'm like, I've got things to say. Is it fantastic every week? No. But I feel like I'm keeping my finger more on the pulse. For example, there's a lot of talk at the moment around psychological safety. Well, I can link feedback to psychological safety.
Right.
Or, whatever's going on. So the weekly newsletters, I'm doing a weekly mini masterclass as well. It's just half an hour every week, but that's about getting in front of more new people.
Yep.
And I even picked up the phone recently and started ringing people, which I've been avoiding.
Right.
So the other thing that's probably changed is I'm starting to get known for knowing something around feedback.
Right.
So especially, local councils, they talk to each other. They're starting to recommend me and they move.
Yeah.
So I've had one lady, she's now up to her third council. She's got me in at every council she's gone to.
Yeah, you come as a package with them.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing is I find people are negotiating, their new position. I've had a few in state government negotiate a coaching program with Sue Anderson as part of the package, if you like. So that's felt really good. So I think what's changed is I've got more organised, starting to value myself, getting more feedback.
Yes.
Even things like looking at my calendar and seeing I do have workshops, booked in. I think it's all just building my confidence.
Yes. And so what does this mean in terms of your growth, Sue? Has it stabilized? Is it sort of going backwards, or what are you finding as a result? Because you put systems in as well. Like, what are you finding now? What's the type of growth you're experiencing now compared to, say, 2 years ago?
Oh, amazingly. I'd say at least double 2 years ago. Well, close to double. Yeah. So that's sales. Yeah. Slowly putting my prices up. I'm still working on that. I'm not going to lie. That's still an area for improvement. So putting the systems in place. So I've got a business manager 7 hours a week.
Okay.
I've had her for, I think, had her, that sounds awful. We've worked together for about, I think, 5 years.
Okay.
But recently I also put in a VA for 20 hours a week,
Right.
which has really, what's happened is the systems, we've set up Asana. We've got the three of us working well together. It's just freed up my brain to be creative.
Right.
It's just been incredible. So I think you called me in a nice way, Jane, a working to-do list in one of our mentoring sessions.
And it was like in the kindest way.
You did. And I thought, yes, I'm not, my brain was so full of what I need to do that I was having trouble finding the space to create.
Yeah.
And since setting up the systems, getting it out of my head and into things like Asana, I'm sleeping better, because I used to lie in bed going, oh, did I reply to them? Did I send the proposal? I can't remember. I better check. Whereas now I just jump on Asana and it's all there. Yeah. So what's happened is my creative brain has just woken up.
Wow.
And I feel like every day, I listen to a lot. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. And I walk along and I hear something and I can just, it's almost like I'm filtering everything I'm hearing through feedback and going, that relates to feedback. And then I send a little message to myself on my phone to, write a newsletter about this topic. Yeah. So the creative juices are definitely flowing.
And that's exciting. Like, that's all your genius, isn't it? And that's why we've sort of gone down this path, really, to have that sense of fun and fulfillment and that joy in your work, because we just need more of that. It's because we get so bogged down in those tasks. We need you to play out the front, play in your genius, take that weight off you. And that takes, like you said, I think that takes, where you've said around valuing yourself enough, seeing that your clients value, being able to get that price point to move, but also it's not just the value in the pricing, it's the value of your time and starting to see the value of your expertise. So that's an incredible shift, Sue. If you had your time again in your practice, you're thinking about how far you've come. So it's meant, I've put here, a shift in charging enough, and all still works in progress in that sometimes. You talked about valuing yourself, which is what I'm hearing about now, developing the creativity and the thought leadership, like you said, about not being known for knowing something, which is not just knowing something, like you're now known for that. People are knowing that you work in the feedback space. If you had your time again, on reflection, now that you're going through this incredible growth phase now, if you had your time again, is there anything you'd change or do differently?
Oh, lots. Lots. So probably the biggest game changer has been working with you, Jane, and I'm not saying this just to promote you or suck up to you or anything like that. I wish I had have started with Jane Anderson sooner. And, I have had some fabulous mentors along the way, and you learn different things from different people. So whether I was more ready now, so in regards to what I would do differently, I think for the first 6 months of working with you, Jane, I just didn't do what you told me to do.
Good on you, Jane. Thanks for that this week. I'll go do this.
Yeah. So whether I was just mismatching myself or whether my head was just so full of to do. Yeah. Oh, my God, have I done that? I haven't done that.
Likely.
Get a bit paralysed.
Yes.
So doing what Jane Anderson tells you to do would be something I would have done sooner. The other big thing for me is I haven't been good at keeping relationships going.
Right.
I've got people in my database that I might have sold a workshop to 8 years ago.
Okay.
I never kept in contact with them.
Wow.
So now it's that, do I reach out? Do I reach out and say, hey, it's been so long since, we talked. So my relationship maintaining I think I could have done that a lot better.
Right.
All those parents whose children I coached 15 years ago, I don't even have their details, and that they will all be working somewhere.
Yeah.
But I didn't see the value in maintaining a good client list, keeping records of conversations. So I think if I had have stayed in contact more, cared more, kept more notes around, where they're up to and what are their challenges. I've started to do that in the last year or so, but I regret that.
Right.
So that would be one big thing. Maintain your relationships.
Right. Great.
Yeah. What else? I think, as we said before, value and back myself more. The other probably big thing is I think I just was very relaxed about my practice. Partly because, my husband's got a business and we can pay the mortgage. So I had the luxury of I'll leave my, work secure role in state government, set up my own business. There was really no pressure financially for me to make it work.
Right.
And and now that my husband's talking about retiring, I'm like, oh, I can. I'm excited. I'm like,
oh, you're excited. Cool.
Yeah, I can work more hours because I was still doing, the school drop off and the school pick up and the orthodontist and the netball. Anyway, so I think as he can take on more things with the kids, I think that's really freeing up my mind. But it's been a mind shift from my practice is a bit of a hobby to, hang on, I'm now got two people who work with me.
Yes.
I want to really treat it more as a practice, and other people would call it a business, but just to take it a bit more seriously. Like I used to write every January in my calendar, write book. I wouldn't write my book. I would just have January off. So that was a big change for me this year. I actually started working, I think, in the first week of January and was amazed at the meetings I got. I ran busking outs and I was amazed at people. I just assumed everyone had January off because I was. So I made some really good sales and ran some, I think 3 busking outs in January, which I'd never done before. Right. So building that mailing list. So that was probably something I've done differently this year. But I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Did you?
Yeah, maybe because the kids are a bit older, I could just say, off you go, leave me alone. But I think because I'm really passionate about the feedback topic.
Yes.
It was a pleasure to work in January. Yeah. So that's a real shift.
Isn't that great? Like you can see the smile on your face and, just the joy this work brings you. And, it's, being an evolution to get to January and a big investment that you've been able to go, okay, well, I'm actually going to invest in this time. This is, and I love that is that we often have that assumption that, oh, no one's around in January, no one's buying. That's an assumption every year that we hit. And December, sometimes people bring that one out as well. But January, you had a really great month. Mm-hmm. And you've also set it up really well because based on the work you've done is that you had everybody ready for closing in January. They're often rethinking their budgets. We're also going through a lot of change still at the moment. So, just people, I was listening to the CEO of Sri Lankan Airlines the other day, and he has come in to help the airline privatize because it was a government airline. And he said, we used to do quarterly planning. And he said, now we do weekly planning because everything's changing so fast. So I think a lot of those old assumptions that we have about how people buy, the clients, people are hitting different challenges quicker, and it's being in right place, right time, all the right messaging. You built up all the connection, the list. So you go to top of the class, I think, for consistency with your Sue does this amazing work with her weekly webcast that she does and invites people to it. Because a lot of people would say, I live in a rural area. I can't do a business like yours, but you're a real testament to that it is possible. You can charge what you're worth and people will still continue to buy. And the other thing, what was it, is realizing that you're running a practice or a business as opposed to a hobby. Like getting serious about, is this what you really want? And now you're coming into this really exciting phase. You got a new team on, hubby close to retiring, and Chris has been such a great support of yours and cheerleader of yours. So for those who might be thinking about starting a practice, Sue, or if they're in this growth phase, what advice would you have for them?
It's such a big question.
What's the number one thing you would say to them?
I would say, this is my all or nothing thinking. I would say, if you're going to do it all in.
Right.
Yeah, and take the time to set up the systems right from the start.
Right.
Yeah, that would be my number one. And I understand, some people have to, they're still working, so they want to just go into their practice for 2 days a week until they build up enough. I guess it's that, make the decision that this is what you want to do.
Right.
So you're committed to it, and you take it seriously. I know that's probably not explaining it very well, but
it's okay.
Treat it as a really important thing. It's such an investment in you. So even if you are only 2 days a week, treat those 2 days a week as, highly valuable, as an investment in setting up yourself for the future, because I never would have dreamed that I could have a practice like this when I was back working in state government.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And it's that freedom to go, you know what, in a fortnight it is my kids' athletics sports day.
Yes.
And, we're an athletics family. I can choose to block that out of my calendar if I want to. If a very important client said, we can only do the workshop on that day and we're going to pay you whatever, then I still have the choice.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd say. Yeah, take it seriously, value it for what it can bring you. Like, it can be amazing. Get the right people around you. So I've, as I said earlier, I've had some great people. Whether the timing's right now, I've got so much from you, Jane. I just find you're so generous, and for me, it's a bit of a safety net. I can always just text you or ring you, and I know that, you'll have an answer for me, or you'll ask me a question.
Yep.
And, having my amazing 2 people who work for me, getting that right has also just been a game changer. So, yeah, if I was to summarize what I just said, set it up properly right from the start, even though you might be tempted to jump ahead and, write your book or do a podcast.
Yep.
A few times I would want to jump ahead and do exciting, shiny new things.
Absolutely.
And I'd tell you, Jane, this is what I want to do. Jane would be, hang on, let's go back to basics. Have you written your, have you got other things set up? And I'd be like, no.
I don't want to do this. Okay, yeah, we can do that. We'll just keep the newsletter first.
Yeah, and do what you love. Like, I do love the high conflict team stuff, and I still do a bit of that now. I did love it, but it's morphed into other stuff. And I think if you're doing what you love, like I said, I was happy to work in January. I was excited to sit there and, write some stuff. So do what you love, but if you're going to do it properly right from the start. It'll save you a lot of heartache. I'm still at the moment having to go back and set up some things that I wish I had set up earlier.
Yeah. And I love what you just said about, like, what I'm hearing is sustainability, like even in the messaging, or like you said, you loved working with the high conflict teams, but, to get that. And what I love about that is that you start somewhere, like you start with something, understanding how to buy. But what you've been uncovering, I think, is around what creates a sustainable practice for you, which is the evolution of the messaging and finding what is the specific problem that they've got. They understand how to buy it. You been able to not only just help them on putting fires out, but how to build an aspirational capability in the organisation, not just for an individual team member, not just for a leader, but actually to start to transform an organization. And that is powerful. That's where you start to really go, that actually this is an organization, is how we operate. And that's when, from their perspective, even though they might not be private enterprise, even as government, we still want to grow. We still got to achieve our potential. We've still got to achieve our strategic plan. We're not going to get there if we haven't got this feedback loop going. So thank you so much for sharing today, Sue. You are a wealth of knowledge. And for those who are aware of your journey and the work that you're doing, it's really inspirational, and we're really excited for you to see you in the next phase of your journey. So thanks so much for joining us today. Where, if people want to go, oh my God, I want to be Sue when I grow up, I love her. If they're thinking about, if they want to learn a little bit more about you, where would you like them to go?
Yeah, they can, of course, find me on LinkedIn. That would be fine. They can also, I've got a bunch of resources available. So if they can go to Sue- or dash, some people say, sue-anderson.com.au/resources.
Okay.
Or, of course, just go to my website as well. Yeah, I'd be happy to hear from anyone, especially if you've had some, really interesting feedback offering or receiving experiences. I'm writing the next book. I think it's going to be called Feedback Fitness.
Yeah.
So I'm always interested to hear from people if they've got juicy feedback stories.
Love it. Great. Well, thank you, Sue. We're really excited. We look forward to seeing the book come out. For those who are listening to the podcast, you'll see in the show notes and the links, we'll send you off to sue-anderson.com.au/resources. She's got some really great things there that you might find even useful, even in working with your own teams and working, even if you have your own consulting practice. This isn't necessarily just for organizations, but to be able to get the most out of your own practice as well. So thanks again, Sue. And make sure you jump on and download those resources and follow Sue everywhere. She's doing an amazing job. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jane.